Hi there and welcome back. This is Jennifer McGuire and I hope you're having a wonderful week. Today I'm sharing a very simple idea of using your smaller stamped images to create a filled-in background on a card. This is a great way to create a one-layer card and make use of those little images that sometimes get overlooked. I have a few ideas for you along the way and many card examples. Basically, you have a focal point image and then you fill everything around it with some soft, subtle stamping. Now for this technique, I do recommend super light inks. Now the inks that I use today and that I think work great for this include some Simon Says Stamp dye inks and some Hero Arts dye inks. These come in particularly light colors that I think are great to fill in the background but not distract from the focal point. You can use any light ink colors you have. I most often reach for the Simon Says Stamp Fog ink. It's a nice, very light gray ink that seems to work with any color palette I use. Today I'm using a bunch of stamp sets from Pinkfresh Studio. I'm very inspired by their line because it has a whimsical feel to it, and they're such unique stamp sets. I like that there are many ways you can build the images together to create awesome scenes. And included on their packaging are some ideas for how to arrange the stamps, which I find is very helpful to me because I sometimes struggle with the whimsical look, even though I love it. You'll see there are lots of images, including larger main images, and tiny little stamps that are great for filling in the background. So I'm going to use a lot of their stamp sets today, and I'll show you each stamp set as I go. I'm using my MISTI stamping tool simply because I like to double stamp my black ink so that it's nice and dark and crisp. I'm using Hero Arts Black Intense ink because this is a Copic friendly ink. And I'm using Neenah Classic Crest Solar White because it's a Copic friendly cardstock, but you can use anything that you want. Notice that I'm only inking up the bottom of the cup, not that top rim. That's because I want to stamp something coming out of the cup. You'll see me even wipe some of the ink away when I do get ink on that rim. This is my lazy way of doing masking, and it really saves time. Now I can stamp this image inside of the cup. So I will double stamp each of these just so I can get a nice dark look. So I'm going to build up lots of images here and just create a little whimsical scene, something just fun and unexpected, so I can create a best wishes card. Now here you can see I'm only stamping the top portion of my flower so that it isn't too long. And again, I'm wiping the ink away so that I don't have to bother with the masking. I'm feeling a little lazy today. So you can see I have stamped a sunflower and some little birds here, just trying to fill the center of the card with basic black stamping. Once I have my stamping done, I'm using a black pen to extend the lines of some of the images so they fill together nicely. I also decided to add some more arches into my rainbow so I can put more colors into it. I really like to alter images to get new looks. It's a nice way to get more out of your stamps, and a nice black pen is perfect for that. So now I'm going to do some coloring. I don't really feel like I am an expert on coloring. I just add some dark areas to my images and some light areas to my images. I honestly don't think about a light source or anything like that. For me, it's all about just having fun coloring it and doing the best that I can. I will link below to some coloring experts in case you are looking for like the right way to do Copic coloring. But again, I just mix a few colors, usually 3 colors, a light, medium, and dark, and just keep going over the colors until I get a decent blend. Again, this is supposed to be fun, no pressure, so I'm just applying the color the best I can. Okay, so after I've colored in all of my images, it's time to fill in the area around it with some light stamping. So I went into those stamp sets that I showed you and grabbed a bunch of tiny little images, some music notes, some birds, and some clouds and such. I'm using that Simon Says Stamp Fog ink, and I'm starting close to the main image in the center, and I'm stamping right up against it. I will work from the inside out, and I find that's the best way to make sure that you fill in the area without leaving an awkward white space. It's kind of hard to see that ink. This is a very soft ink. If you want to, you could use a darker ink. But this way, that soft stamping in the background adds some interest but doesn't distract from the overall stamping of the card. If the stamp sets that you used for your focal images don't have little images to stamp around it, look at some of your other stamp sets. Many times stamp sets have small images that we often overlook. Okay, now I wanted to make this look like a one-layer card, but you can see that my Copic marker bled through to the other side. So I'm going to completely cheat, and I'm going to glue this panel onto a white note card. So my stamped panel is 4 1/4 by 5.5, and I'm adding it to a top folding 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch note card. So looking at it, looks like a one-layer card. So we have that fun scene in the center with lots of bold coloring, and then the light little whimsical images stamped around it. And it really adds a lot of interest to the card. Now my next example is not a one-layer card, but I wanted to show you can use this technique with die cut embellishments too. I'm using the Pinkfresh Studio Magical Unicorn stamp set and die set. This has fun sentiments on it and the images to create this fun unicorn face. Now I kept the packaging from this, so I knew how to arrange this, and it makes putting this card together very simple. I went ahead and die cut all of the pieces, including the flowers and leaves, from some scrap paper. Now I'm using the coordinating stamps to stamp the little details onto each of the pieces. I went ahead and cut some extras so that I have enough to make another card. Now it's time to put the unicorn's horn together. Now I have no idea if you call this the horn of a unicorn. I'm hoping somebody knows the correct term for this. I'm guessing it's a horn. Anyways, I have one of the white die cuts here that I'm stamping the horn on with VersaMark ink. And then I'm going to dip that into silver sparkle embossing powder, because every unicorn horn should be sparkly, if that's what you actually call it, but I'm hoping it is. I die cut a couple extra horns that I will stack behind the glittery one so that it has some dimension to it and stands out more on the card. I will do the same for the ear. For each ear, I have 3 stacked die cuts, and the top one is actually a white glitter cardstock from Tonic. I thought it'd be fun to have a little sparkle there too. I'm adhering all of these pieces onto a 4 by 5 1/4 inch piece of white cardstock, and I'm following that picture that is on the packaging, so I know just how to assemble it. Once I have it assembled, I'm stamping the eyes and the sentiment with black ink. I'm using the Versafine Clair black ink. That's my new favorite black ink for stamping sentiments. Unfortunately, it's hard to find as the manufacturer is back ordered, but it should be back on the market soon. Okay, so from this same stamp set, there was a small cluster of stars image, and that is perfect for filling in the background on this card. So again, I start close to the image and work my way out, and I'm using the Simon Says Stamp Fog ink. By using these tiny little images, you can fill in the background without having to worry about doing any type of masking. Okay, after I filled in that entire background, I did add a few little pearls to the center of the flowers. I used my Gina K Connect glue and some Lucy's Cards Candy Bright pearls. I like that this is a mix of colors, so I had just the right color that I needed for the card. Then I added my panel to a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch top folding Simon Says Stamp Fog cardstock, which matches that background ink perfectly. You can see how the little bit of background stamping adds a lot to this die cut card. Okay, now for my next example. This one's very similar to the first, but this time I repeatedly stamped hearts in the background. And I wanted to show you another way of doing a bit of lazy masking. So I stamped my main image and the sentiment with black Copic friendly ink. Now I'm going to add 2 balloons to this. Again, I really like that these stamp sets allowed you to build any kind of little magical scene that you want. Now for the third balloon, I could have done masking, and if I wanted perfect results, that probably would have been a good idea. But I wanted to show you that perfect doesn't necessarily need to happen. Here I am stamping up the top of the balloon with black ink, and I'm wiping away any of the ink that would overlap with the other balloons. Now I'm doing the bottom of the balloon and also making sure that the string doesn't go too long so it doesn't stamp through her face. Once I've done pretty much all of the stamping I could do without masking, I drew in the rest of the area with a black pen, and anywhere a little bit of that ink got where I didn't want it, I just scrape it away lightly with a craft knife. Nobody will ever know. Now I'm using this Pinkfresh Studio Basic Banner stamp set on the background. I'm using the cluster of hearts images, but I really like all of these images for stamping subtle things in the background. All of these would be fun to do. But I decided to go with the cluster of hearts, and later I used the cluster of dots. But you could even use the banners and stamp right up against your images without having to mask. Okay, so now I can do the stamping. Again, I'm starting up close to the focal point images and working my way around the card and out towards the edge. This way I can be sure that all my images are kind of evenly spaced in the background. But the nice thing about this fill-in stamping technique and using a light ink is that it doesn't have to be perfect. And I'm very thankful that I don't need to do any masking for it. Okay, so I glued that piece onto a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch white note card. So again, it looks like a 1-layer card. You can see I did that light gray stamping around the sentiment on the bottom too, so that it didn't do any kind of overlap stamping. This is a great way to keep the results nice and crisp and clean looking. Okay, so I have a few more examples for you. I'm going to show you the main ideas on each of them and what makes them different from the others. Hopefully they'll inspire you too. For this one, I used the Pinkfresh Studio Bird with a Flower stamp set. I saw this one at the craft show and was really excited about it because the sentiments are very unique. Like, thank you for dealing with my kind of crazy so well, just because you have my heart, just because days are better with you. Lots of sweet sentiments that are perfect to give to a friend. Also, there are those cute images that you can build up together. So I did the stamping on the background of this. Again, this is a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch white piece of cardstock. This time I'm using a stamp set with bigger images to fill in the background to show you that works too. This is the Pinkfresh Studio Dainty Flowers stamp set, which is another beautiful set and is great for techniques and for creating backgrounds. So I'm using this to stamp around the background, again starting close to the image and working my way out. I'm just picking and choosing the different images that seem to fit into each place the best. This time I used Hero Art's soft vanilla ink for a nice creamy looking stamped image on the background that wasn't too distracting from the main image. These larger images for this fill-in stamping technique is best when your focal images are smaller, so there's room to see them. So I adhered this onto a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch top folding white note card so that it again looks like a 1-layer card and my Copic coloring doesn't show through to the back. I really like that soft yellow option as another way to do fill-in stamping. Okay, now this is a completely different look. This time my focal image is just a sentiment. I used the Pinkfresh Studio Happy Everything stamp set. This is another one with really unique sentiments such as love you for a million reasons, you are the one I turn to, you are my favorite, lots of sweet sentiments. Also, there are great images for simple stamp layering, kind of a whimsical look to it. So I'm using this set entirely. I'm starting with the Love You for a Million Reasons stamped towards the center top of a 4 by 5 1/4 inch piece of white cardstock. Now around that, I'm going to do my fill-in stamping. This time, instead of using just one soft solid ink, I'm going to do a bit of layered stamping, but again, all in soft colors. This is just another way to do in this fill-in background technique. A great way to use small images for the background and keep your sentiment in focus. I'm a big fan of strong sentiments on a card, and this is a great way to use some of our favorites. So I did the bottom layer of the flowers with soft pool ink, and the second layer, which has some kind of sketchy outlines, I stamped on top with soft granite ink. I then put a dot of yellow Copic marker in the center of the flowers, And then I did little dots in the white area between with a gray Copic marker, just to kind of fill it in and make it look like a more complete pattern around our stamped sentiment. By keeping that all light on the background, the focus is definitely on that sentiment, and it looks like we created our own pattern paper. So look at any of your small images and look at any of your favorite sentiments, and you can combine them together to create a clean and simple card. Now I have a few more cards that I just want to show you to hopefully give you more ideas for this technique. For this one, I used the Pinkfresh Studio Fleur 1 stamp set. I really like the sketchy look of all of these flowers, and I wanted to combine them together on a card. I took that main large flower image, stamped that in the center of my card, and colored it. Then I used all of those other fun images to fill in stamp around it. Now these images can be used individually, but I thought it was fun to use them together. So you can see the coloring that I did in the center and the light gray stamping I did around the edge with the fog ink. Now that sentiment is from that Happy Everything stamp set that I showed you earlier. The outside says, "You are the one I turn to," and the inside says, "And I love you for that." Thought that was a really sweet sentiment. This is a good card to do the black stamping, and you can take the coloring on the go and then turn it into a card when you get home later. Okay, another quick card. This one uses the Pinkfresh Studio Believe stamp set. Now they came out with a bunch of word stamp sets. There's Believe, Brilliant, Happy, Thanks, and I used a couple of them in the video today. I like that there's a large decorative word with some simple images on it, and then different smaller sentiments that you can put with it to build up different greetings. So here I stamped the sentiment and I stamped some images around it and did basic coloring with Copic markers. Then for the fog stamping in the background, I used that Fleur 1 stamp set that I showed you just on my last card. Now you'll see this is mounted to a fog note card that I created from fog cardstock, and that simple light grade cardstock is great as a backdrop for pretty much any coloring or any kind of card that you create. Okay, I have one more example. It goes along the same lines as the last one. This is the Thanks stamp set from Pinkfresh Studio. I stamped this again with black ink, and then around it I stamped some dots from that Banners stamp set that I showed you earlier using the soft fog ink. This was very quick to pull together and would be great for a note card set, and you could change up whatever images you stamp in the background and change up the color of the flower. Okay, there's a way to use your smaller images for a fill-in stamping technique to add interest to your background. If you're interested in these products, I do link them below in my description. Also, you can go to my blog for much more information. As always, I really appreciate the time you spend here watching my videos. I hope they're helpful. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you soon.